The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Picture this. It's the 1994 Winter Olympics. The world holds its breath as Dan Jansen glides onto the ice, a man many consider the greatest speed skater who ever lived. But here's the twist. Since he was a teenager, despite his undeniable talent, he seemed cursed. Race after race, he'd explode off the starting line at world record pace, and then disaster would strike. A tiny slip. A bizarre mistake. He was the skater who should have been drowning in gold medals, but instead kept coming up empty-handed. Now, after just finishing 8th in his strongest event, the 500-meter race, his dream appears shattered. He's heartbroken. One race remains. The 1,000-meter. An event that was never really his thing. This is it, his last shot at Olympic glory. But then something extraordinary happens before that final race. Something shifts deep inside him. He stops obsessing over the medal he desperately wants. He stops torturing himself with memories of races that slipped through his fingers. Instead, he starts thinking about everything he already has. The coaches who believed in him. The family who loved him through every devastating loss, the friends who never gave up on him, the pure, simple joy of feeling the wind against his face as he skates, the way this sport has shaped who he's become. Suddenly he's overwhelmed, not by pressure but by gratitude. He realizes just how incredibly lucky he is to even be standing there. This final race won't be about chasing something he lacks. It will be a gift. An expression of pure thanks to the sport that gave him so much. In that moment, winning or losing doesn't matter anymore. He feels whole, he feels happy, and as he steps onto that ice, a genuine smile spreads across his face. He skates with a lightness he's never experienced before. Pure joy flowing through every movement. And you know what happens? He doesn't just win, he shatters the world record and claims the gold medal. It was the only Olympic race where he wasn't skating from a place of desperate need, but from a place of deep appreciation for what he'd already gained. So what changed for Dan Jansen in those precious moments? He accidentally stumbled upon a secret that separates the chronically frustrated from the genuinely happy. It's the same secret that explains why so many high achievers, those CEOs, entrepreneurs, and top students, can pile up incredible successes and still feel like they're somehow failing. Today, we're diving into a book that reveals that secret, The Gap and the Gain, by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. This isn't your typical self-help book. It's more like a profound operating system for your mind, built from decades of coaching some of the world's most ambitious entrepreneurs. By the time we're done today, you'll understand the invisible psychological trap that keeps most people miserable, and you'll have the one mental tool you need to find confidence, satisfaction, and success right here, right now, not in some distant future. Let's start with a question that has puzzled philosophers for centuries. What actually is happiness? Back in 1776, Thomas Jefferson penned one of history's most famous phrases, declaring our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Sounds inspiring, right? But hidden within those beautiful words is a subtle trap. The moment you say you're pursuing happiness, you're basically admitting something. You don't have it right now. You're chasing something that's always just around the next corner, always after the next achievement, the next goal, the next milestone. Happiness becomes this destination you can never quite reach. This is the essence of what the authors call the gap. Imagine a simple diagram. At the top sits your ideal, the place you want to be, that perfect future you dream about. At the bottom is your start, where you began. And somewhere in the middle is where you are now, what you've actually achieved. Most of us, especially the ambitious ones, spend our entire lives measuring the distance between where we are now and our ideal. We look at what we've achieved and immediately look up at that vast space still remaining. That space? That's the gap. When you live in the gap, you're flooded with feelings of failure, frustration, disappointment, and low self-esteem. Doesn't matter how much progress you've made, because you're always focused on what's still missing. The book tells the story of a guy named Edward. When his financial advisor, Chad, first met him, Edward was in his early 40s, pulling in an excellent income, with $2.5 million in cash ready to invest. But the guy was riddled with anxiety. He told Chad, "If I can just get my portfolio to $5 million, then I'll feel secure and finally relax." So they set the goal, and Edward worked the plan. Within a few years, boom, he passed his $5 million target. But did he feel secure? Did he relax? Not even close. The goalpost had moved. Now he told Chad, "I feel like I need $10 million to really feel safe." He hit that milestone too. By 2019, his portfolio was worth $17 million. From the outside, he was absolutely crushing it, living the dream. But on the inside? Still in the gap, more anxious than ever, constantly consuming media predicting financial collapse. He couldn't see his incredible progress. All he could see was the gap between his current reality and some imagined future catastrophe. He ended up abandoning the very strategy that made him successful, pulling all his money out of the market in fear and missing out on enormous growth. Edward was stuck on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill, running harder and harder, achieving more and more, but staying in the exact same emotional place, unhappy and unfulfilled. His ideal was like a mirage in the desert. No matter how far he walked, it stayed in the distance. So if measuring against your ideal is a recipe for misery, what's the alternative? This is where the profound, life-altering shift comes in. It's the concept of the gain. Instead of measuring the distance between your achievement and your ideal, you turn around and measure the distance between your achievement and where you started. You measure backward. You look at the actual progress you've made. That is the gain. When you measure your life in gains, you experience feelings of success, satisfaction, confidence, and optimism. Same achievement, same reality, but an entirely different emotional experience based on what you choose to measure against. You're in the gap every time you're frustrated about being 5 minutes late to a concert you were excited about. You're in the gain when you focus on the fact that you're out for an amazing night with someone you care about. The whole night becomes a gain. You're in the gap when you complain that the dinner your mom made isn't your absolute favorite. You're in the gain when you appreciate that someone actually cooked a meal for you. You can't be in both places at once. You're always choosing one or the other. This isn't just about positive thinking. It's about accurate measurement. Your ideal is a fantasy, a projection of the future. Your starting point is a real, concrete fact. The gain is about measuring reality. As performance coach Tim Grover says, winners don't have a to-do list. They have a done list. Living in the gain is all about focusing on your done list. So how do we break free from the gap and start living in the gain? The book lays out a clear path, starting with a fundamental shift in our motivation. It all comes down to the difference between two simple words, want and need. When you're in the gap, you operate from a place of need. You need that A on the test to feel smart. You need that person's approval to feel worthy. You need to win that game to feel successful. Needing something external to be happy is the very definition of the gap. It creates an unhealthy attachment, a desperation that poisons the whole process. Psychologists call this obsessive passion. It's when your passion controls you, leading to impulsive, short-sighted decisions driven by some internal void you're trying to fill. Research shows that obsessive passion is linked to low self-esteem and makes it nearly impossible to be in a state of flow where you're fully immersed and enjoying what you're doing. Remember Dan Jansen, our speed skater? For years, he needed that gold medal. That need created so much pressure it literally caused him to choke. His passion was obsessive. Now consider Trevor Lawrence, one of the most celebrated college quarterbacks of all time. Before being drafted into the NFL, he said something in an interview that shocked the sports world. He said he didn't need football to feel worthy as a person, that there was more to life. The media went absolutely crazy. Commentators claimed he didn't have the win-at-all-costs attitude required to be great, They completely misunderstood him. Trevor wasn't saying he didn't care. He was saying he operated from a place of want, not need. He wants to be the best, he wants to win, but his self-worth isn't on the line. He loves the game for its own sake. This is what the book calls harmonious passion. It's when you control your passion, not the other way around. It's intrinsically motivated. You do it because you love it. This healthy detachment is counterintuitive, but it's the secret to peak performance. By no longer needing what you want, you're actually far more enabled to get it. You can perform freely, without the weight of your ego crushing you. Once Dan Jansen let go of needing the medal and simply focused on his love for the sport, his harmonious passion, he was finally free to perform at his best. Living in the gain is about shifting from need to want. It's about understanding that you're already whole, you're already enough. You don't set goals to become happy. You set goals because you are happy and want to expand that happiness. The next step in escaping the gap is to reclaim control over how you measure your own life. You must become self-determined. From a very young age, most of us are trained to measure ourselves against external reference points. In school, you're not just learning, you're being ranked. Your test score gets compared to the national average. Your percentile tells you where you stand, relative to everyone else. This system quietly teaches you a dangerous lesson, that your worth is determined by how you stack up against others. This external measurement system is the perfect breeding ground for the gap. As we get older, we just trade the classroom for a different set of external standards: social media likes, the size of our house, the job title on our business card. We spend our lives trying to keep up with the Joneses, forgetting that the Joneses are probably trying to keep up with someone else. As the book wisely states, any form of social comparison puts you in the gap. To be in the gain, you have to change your reference point from external to internal. You stop measuring yourself against others and only measure yourself against yourself. The book introduces a brilliant exercise from marketing expert Dean Jackson. He realized that the phrase, "I'll be successful when," was a gap trap, always placing success in the future. So he flipped it. He asked himself, "I know I'm being successful when..." He came up with his own personal list of success criteria. Things like, "I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today?" And, "There are no whiny people in my life, and I wear my watch for curiosity only." This list became his internal compass. It wasn't about what society deemed successful, it was about what a successful life felt like to him. When you define your own success criteria, you become the one in charge. You're no longer playing someone else's game, you're playing your own. A powerful example of this in action is the story of the British rowing team. For nearly a century, they hadn't won a gold medal. They were perpetually average. Then, in the lead-up to the 2000 Olympics, they adopted a radical new filtering process. For every single decision, every choice, every opportunity, each team member asked themselves one simple question: will it make the boat go faster? Stay up late for a party? Will it make the boat go faster? Nope. Eat that donut? Will it make the boat go faster? Nope. This simple, self-determined success criterion eliminated all distractions. It aligned the entire team around a single, internal measure of progress. They stopped worrying about what other teams were doing. They focused only on their boat. And guess what? They won the gold medal. Defining your own success and creating your own filter is how you take back your power from the world and become truly self-determined. Once you understand the concepts, you begin to see the gap and the gain everywhere. And you realize that these aren't just fleeting moods. They have a profound and cumulative impact on our lives. There's a compound effect to living in either state. Every time you fall into the gap, it's like a micro-trauma to your system. It creates toxic stress. This isn't just a feeling, it's a biological reality. Prolonged stress wears down your body and can actually shorten your lifespan. On the flip side, being in the gain is restorative and healing. The book points to a fascinating longitudinal study of 180 Catholic nuns. When they first joined their convent as young women, they wrote short autobiographical sketches. Decades later, Researchers analyzed these entries for positive emotional content. The results were astounding. The nuns whose entries were overtly joyful lived, on average, nearly 10 years longer than those whose entries were more neutral or negative. At age 85, 90% of the happiest nuns were still alive, compared to only 34% of the least happy. They didn't live longer because of a different lifestyle. They all lived in the same convent, eating the same food. They lived longer because of how they framed their world. Our perception literally shapes our biology. This is the field of epigenetics. The book shares 2 remarkable studies that prove this point. In one, researchers studied 84 women who cleaned hotel rooms for a living. Half of them were told that their daily work was excellent exercise and met the Surgeon General's recommendations for an active lifestyle. The other half were told nothing. 4 weeks later, the women in the informed group, whose behavior hadn't changed at all, showed objective decreases in weight, blood pressure, and body fat. Simply changing their mindset, their framing of the activity, changed their physical bodies. In another study, participants were given a milkshake. Half were told it was an indulgent 620-calorie shake, while the other half were told it was a sensible 120-calorie shake. In reality, both shakes were identical at 380 calories. The researchers measured ghrelin, the hunger hormone in their blood. The bodies of those who thought they drank the indulgent shake responded as if they were full. Their ghrelin levels dropped sharply. The bodies of those who thought they drank the sensible shake responded as if they were still hungry. Their minds told their bodies how to react. The context you create for an experience is more powerful than the experience itself. Being in the gain is the most powerful and energizing context you can create for your life. It doesn't mean bad things won't happen. It means you choose how you frame them. So, how do we make living in the gain a consistent practice? The book provides a set of powerful, actionable tools. The first and most fundamental is to always measure backward. This sounds simple, but it goes against our natural wiring. As we learn and grow, we quickly adapt to our new normal. Psychologists call this automaticity, a skill that once required intense concentration, like driving a car, eventually becomes second nature. Once it's automatic, we forget how hard it once was. We forget the gain we made. This is why the book so strongly advocates for keeping records, journals, annual reviews, or simple notes. It shares the moving story of Jill, a physical therapist who works with children with severe disabilities. One of her patients, Rosie, has a brain disorder that doctors said would make it impossible for her to learn or develop. Every day is a struggle, but one day, while reviewing her annual report, Jill saw a note from the previous year, working on walking on grass. She had completely forgotten that just a year ago, this simple act seemed like an insurmountable challenge. Now, Rosie walked on grass like a champion. Realizing this gain filled Jill with a profound sense of pride and hope. She called Rosie's parents, who had also forgotten this milestone, and they wept on the phone, reminded that their daughter could grow, that progress was possible. Without that backward measurement, they would have remained lost in the gap of daily challenges. Measuring backward is the fuel that creates hope and resilience. You can do this for yourself. Take a few minutes and think back to who you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What did you not know then that you know now? What skills have you developed? What challenges have you overcome? You're not the same person. You've made thousands of gains, big and small, that you've likely forgotten. Acknowledging them isn't about ego. It's about building a foundation of confidence based on real, tangible evidence of your own growth. To make this a daily habit, the book offers its most practical and potent strategy: measure 3 wins daily. The authors argue that the single most important hour of your day is the last hour before you go to sleep. This is your sweet spot. What you do in this hour sets the tone for your sleep and for your entire next day. Most people spend this hour in the gap, mindlessly scrolling on their phones, consuming negative news, or worrying about tomorrow. This floods their brain with inputs that lead to poor sleep and a reactive, unfocused mindset upon waking. The gain alternative is incredibly simple. In the hour before bed, put your phone away. Take out a journal or a piece of paper and do two things. First, write down your 3 biggest wins from the day that's ending. These don't have to be monumental achievements. Maybe you finished a difficult project. Maybe you had a meaningful conversation with a friend. Maybe you simply went for a walk when you didn't feel like it. The act of identifying and writing down these wins trains your brain to look for the positive. It ends your day on a note of gratitude and confidence, which research shows dramatically improves sleep quality. Second, write down the 3 wins you want to accomplish tomorrow, not a long, overwhelming to-do list. Just 3. This focuses you on what's most important, not just what's urgent. As business expert Jim Collins said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. This simple act of planning gives your subconscious mind a mission to work on while you sleep. You wake up with purpose and clarity, rather than just reacting to the world. Dan Sullivan has been doing this for decades. He says, "I'm always winning. Regardless of whether there are any setbacks or there's any disappointments, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I have my 3 wins. Tomorrow, I'm going to have 3 wins. In a week, I'm going to have 21 wins." This practice doesn't just change your mood, it fundamentally retrains your brain. What you focus on expands. By consistently looking for gains, you start to see them everywhere. The final and perhaps most profound skill is learning to transform every experience into a gain. This is about taking complete ownership of your past. When you're in the gap, you're a victim of your experiences. Bad things happen to you. You wish they were different, and you resent them. This emotional distance from your past is what creates trauma. When you're in the gain, you believe that everything happens for you. You're the driver, not the passenger. You get to decide what your experiences mean. This doesn't mean you have to like what happened. It means you're committed to using it for your growth. The book shares the incredible story of Howard Getson. On a single day during the 2008 financial crisis, he woke up and lost over $2 million. It was, as he put it, the worst day in the market since the Great Depression. He was devastated. But then he had an epiphany. It wasn't the worst day for everyone. Someone, somewhere, had an amazing day. This forced him to look at his own investment system. He realized a rule he had created to avoid risk. Shutting down any system that lost more than 20% had actually prevented the very systems that would have thrived in the crash from working. That painful, multi-million-dollar loss became his greatest lesson. He completely redesigned his approach, shifting his entire business model to adapt to change. He took a catastrophic event and transformed it into a gain that became the foundation for his future success. This is what it means to be anti-fragile. The resilient person resists shocks and stays the same. The anti-fragile person gets better from them. An even more powerful example is the story of Richie and Natalie Norton. They endured a series of unimaginable tragedies. Their 3-month-old son, Gavin, passed away. Years later, a failed adoption meant losing 3 foster children they loved as their own. Then, Natalie had a stroke, and their young son was hit by a car and left in a coma. It was one valley after another, but on the day their son died, they made a decision. We will be better because of this, not bitter because of this. They refused to be victims of their story. They chose to create its meaning. That tragedy became a wake-up call to live their dreams now. They quit their jobs, started their business, and began living a life of adventure and deep family connection. They're genuinely grateful for their experiences, not because they enjoyed the pain, but because they used that pain to forge a life of incredible meaning and purpose. The book offers a tool called the Experience Transformer. For any experience, positive or negative, you ask yourself a series of questions. What about this experience worked? What can I learn from this about what I don't want? Knowing what I know now, how will I approach the future differently? What about this experience am I grateful for? This is how you actively organize your past. You don't avoid it. You approach it. You mine it for lessons. You transform it into fuel. When you do this, your past stops being a source of regret and becomes your greatest source of wisdom and confidence. As we wrap up this journey, let's step back and reflect on the core message of The Gap and the Gain. The book's most powerful lesson, the one that can fundamentally change the texture of your daily life, is this: happiness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not something you find or pursue. Happiness is a method of measurement. It's a choice you make, in every moment, about how you frame your experience. For so many of us, especially those driven by ambition, we live our lives with our eyes fixed on the horizon, on the ideal. We tell ourselves, I'll be happy when I get into that college, I'll be happy when I get that job, I'll be happy when I achieve that goal. But as we've learned, the horizon is an illusion. It moves as we move. And by constantly measuring ourselves against it, we rob ourselves of the joy and satisfaction that's available to us right now, based on the real progress we've already made. The gap is the default setting for the human mind. It's easy to see what's wrong, what's missing, where we fall short. It takes courage and intention to flip the script. It takes a conscious decision to turn around, look back at where we started, and acknowledge the journey. That's where true confidence is born, not from blind optimism, but from the hard evidence of your own growth. So how can you begin to apply this today? Here are 2 simple, practical actions you can take. First, I challenge you to master your sweet spot. For the next 7 nights, commit to spending the last 15 minutes of your day completely screen-free. Take out a notebook and write down 3 things you gained today. It could be that you learned something new in class, had a good laugh with a friend, or simply resisted the urge to procrastinate, anything that represents progress. Then, write down the 1 to 3 most important gains you want to create tomorrow. This simple ritual will shift you from a reactive to a proactive state. You'll end your days feeling accomplished and begin your days feeling purposeful. Second, conduct your own gains audit. Sometime this week, find 30 minutes of quiet time. Think back to who you were 5 years ago. What were you worried about? What skills did you lack? What did you not yet know? Make a list of all the gains you've made since then, the knowledge you've acquired, the relationships you've built, the challenges you've overcome. You'll be shocked at how far you've come. This isn't about building your ego. It's about building your confidence on a foundation of truth. That was the book summary of The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. We've certainly explored the core ideas today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a travel brochure. It can show you the beautiful pictures, but it can never replace the feeling of actually being there. The real magic of a book like this happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with your own life in a way you didn't expect. This summary is a map, designed to help you see the destination and decide if the journey is for you. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something inside of you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new concept. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you measure your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep building our wisdom, one gain at a time. Let's keep growing together.